a recording of this later, and whenever I get back to the mainland, I will I'll put it on the YouTubes, and um, I'll follow up with an email to the group when it's up on YouTube, so you can rewatch it, or if you have any questions. So, without further ado, let's give it over to Linda. Have fun and go crazy. I'll be on mute, and I'll just unmute if there's a question.
Awesome. Well, hey everybody, welcome. We're in the dregs of 2020, and what I want you to do is to realize that some of this is going to be repetition for some of you, and some of it's going to be brand new. So just realize also that it's okay if you're not ready to plan for 2021, because this has been a heck of a year. To put it mildly. And I know that I don't quite have my planning done, and I'm looking at New Year's Day maybe. And we're all going to be shifting what we want to do next year throughout the year, because it's going to be a little bit strange, I'm sure. So, I want you to try this. Close your eyes and think about where you want to be in 1 year, in the end of December. If everything went perfectly, what do you want to accomplish between now and then with your writing, your publishing, your marketing? And if you've got a piece of paper, write some notes. If you don't, remember it. For decades, I've kind of made the same New Year's resolutions, and I failed at them big time. I was always missing pieces that were essential, and I spent a lot of time guilting myself about not following through with things. So in the past several years, I've become really passionate about learning planning systems and goal setting, and I think I have some tips for those of you who might be floundering in the same way that I am. This is something that Matt has talked about in his goal setting things, SMART goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. Now, I think next year is going to be interesting. I think that in order for each of us to make it through the year, I think it's wise to think about having quarterly planning sessions, so that every 3 months you sit back and look at what happened before and what happened in the last 3 months and say, do I still want to keep doing this? Is this relevant? I think that's what we're all going to need to do this year. But before this year ends, go through any goals you had for 2020 and write down what worked and what didn't towards achieving them. Don't beat yourself up. We're just trying to find the information. And I just want you to focus on the positive, because it's hello, can you please mute yourself? Thanks. I think we need to basically the carrot works better than the stick. I know that I don't write if I'm focusing on what I didn't do. And I think it's easier to make publishing goals more specific than writing ones. I know the steps because my brain knows the steps I need to publish a book or create an ad, what needs to happen to get my newsletter out. Writing can be a little bit more vague unless you find a way to measure it and track it on a daily basis. So basically, there's several different ways you can measure it. You can measure the word count that you do in each writing session, the number of pages written. If you do it by project, I want to write a new short story, I want to write a novel. Streaks. I know a lot of people who use streaks. They don't necessarily work for me because I don't like to do the same thing every day, but I know a lot of people just thrive on them. So you got to figure out what kind of person you are, what makes it how you're going to measure what it is that you're trying to write. And don't go overboard. I know that we're not feeling optimistic now, but when January rolls around, things kind of tend to shift and we go, "Oh, I can do everything." Don't do that. Um, so think about what you need to do. Yeah,
Linda, what type of goals do you have? Did you do a lot of stuff every year? What type of goals
I
did
do.
you typically set at the beginning of the year, and what did they
Okay,
look like over
well,
the course of last year?
yeah, last year, one of the things I did is I took those, I think there were five categories that you said about the, of one was writing, I believe, and one was structure, like your, your website, your newsletter, all your infrastructure. And another one was about promotion and marketing, and another one was outreach. And so I took those and I said, okay, my goal last year at the beginning of the year was to write 250,000 words a year. And I figured that was a doable goal. And it, I had done it the year before, so I could do it. I knew I could do it. But last year was not that goal, not that year. So I bailed halfway through the year and just said, okay, this is not going to happen. It's just not. It's crazy. And I did, the other goals were for my infrastructure. I wanted to revamp my newsletter and move it over to SendFox. My website, I wanted to get my website spiffed up. That didn't happen this year. It's still on the table for next year. And for but I did do something different with my newsletter. I decided that I was going to do my newsletter once a month and twice a month, and once a month write a book review on it of epic fantasy. And the second piece was going to be that and I'd send the link to my newsletter, and I'd write the book report on my website on a blog post. And then the second thing was going to be kind of like a more personal, chatty, newsy blog post, and I would also write that in the newsletter, which was different. And then the the reaching out piece was about trying to get connected with other epic fantasy writers, and so I basically wrote to them and in on whatever way I could get hold of them and said, "Hey, I posted a review. I hope you like it. It's I hope that some of the people do come and you know buy your book, basically." So that was my reaching out, and many of the people responded, but a lot of them didn't. And so I was trying to hit all four of those five categories, and plus take days off. That was the thing. I wanted to make sure that I took 24 consecutive hours off where I was not doing any writing, any publishing, any marketing, nothing. So those are the type of goals that I did as far as writing is concerned. And then I have life goals, garden goals. I have all these different categories. So that's where I was going with it.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Hmm. So basically, make your goals something that you can do. You just want to push yourself slightly outside the limit, um, and not do something that's wildly ridiculous, even though you're tempted to. Because I've done that. Doesn't really work. So once you've got your goals sort of figured out, go through that smart thing again and find out if they meet it, and if not, just keep messing with your wording and see how you can make that goal fit. um okay, a year is a long time to measure things by, and most of us can't do that. Most of us have to break it down. I break my goal down by weeks. Like, say, if I was planning on doing 250,000 words, that's 5,000 something words a week. I can't remember exactly what it is. And I'm, yeah, I don't remember. I think it might be like 5,200 words a week. And so then I divide that up by days. That's 1,100 words a day. And if I get bonus, that's just gravy for the days that I'm going to bail. And I've given you an example here. I will say that if you have health or work issues that regularly derail you, I have friends with migraines and they just crop up, or they have other health problems and you just lose a day or two. And it happens on a regular basis. And so you take that yearly goal that you want to do and divide it by 40 weeks. That gives you 12 weeks off a year. And that will put some cushion in there that will help you, not be so stressed out, because none of us needs more stress. It helps if you know about how many words you normally write, or if you say, well, if you use are measuring by pieces of work, how many chapters, maybe how many pages, that helps. And once you have your weekly goal, divide it down, keep on dividing it down. Maybe you even want to divide it further than by a day. Divide it up by 15-minute chunks. It's 15 minutes is easier to find than an hour. Teach yourself to write in 15-minute sprints. Set a timer. Don't do warm-ups. Just sit down at your computer, write for 15 minutes, and end in the middle of a scene. Then go take a 5-minute break, stretch, get some tea, whatever you need to do. And then go sit down and go for another 15 minutes, and repeat as many times throughout the day as you need to get your goal. That tends to work really well. And there's different ways to measure it depending on what appeals to you. I like using a spreadsheet and a calendar. I update the spreadsheet at least weekly, but the calendar is just sitting right next to my desk, and I just scribble down how many words I wrote, and I'm done. I know people who use a whiteboard because they have the whole month sitting there and they can just look at the whole month and it makes them feel good. Do whatever you want. I know Matt taught us Kanban system one time. I could make that work with my writing and publishing, but I couldn't make it work with the entire rest of my life. So I just had too many goals. But it's a really great thing, and it works for a lot of people. And if any of you want to know more about that, I'm sure he'd be willing to talk about it.
I can talk at great length on Kanban.
But the important part is you need to work towards hitting that weekly or monthly goal, because when you get the small pieces done, that's what allows you to reach the big one. And plan that you're going to fail at some point, because we all do. It just happens here. And it doesn't help to blame yourself. Just realize that it's going to happen. And whether it's, you get the flu, or you break your leg, or you get obsessed with researching something, just cut yourself some slack and go back to the writing when it's time. And also plan for success.
Linda, you talked about a missing your word goal last year, the 250,000 words.
Yeah.
When did you, what conditions, what were the conditions that you saw that you knew you were not going to make that? How did you make that decision? What did you pivot into? How did you adapt and change on that?
Well, I didn't adapt well as far as my word count. It was kind of slow all year. I did at the beginning of the year. I don't think I ever got going, and I never really hit that 5,200 words a week. And so I think by the end of February, I knew stuff was shaken up badly. And I just, because it was obvious around here. Um, and it was just, I just kind of kept looking at my word count every week on the spreadsheet and going, wow, that's pathetic. And yes, I was beating myself up. um, and I was distracted by not just Corona, I was distracted by any number of things that were going on because I was transforming my entire life. The way I eat, the way I exercise, the amount of physical work I did. So everything was getting shaken up. And I realized that I didn't want to be writing. It was really clear. And I don't do well under those circumstances. And I'm aware of that, that I don't, if I don't want to be writing, if I really and truly do not want to be at the keyboard working on a piece, then it's not going to work. And I tried shifting gear. I thought, okay, so I can't write this that I'm working on. Can I write something else? Can I do another project? So I came up with another project that I had been wanting to work on, and I I I messed around with that, and I got some words in, but pretty much by around the time it was April or May, and I was getting really heavily into marketing the third mystery that was coming out in June. It became clear to me that that project wasn't going to work because I was writing about contemporary, it was a contemporary fantasy, and it was one of the fairy books, but it was set in Everett. And I was trying to write it, and nobody was going anywhere because they were in lockdown. And I couldn't make any action happen. It was all people standing around talking all the time. And I just went, wow. So I tried to switch back to the other project that had kind of um, gone south, and that didn't work either. And promotion took over, and I just kind of went, okay, yeah. And then by the time summer came, I just went, yeah, I'm just going to try to write when I can. And then the only thing that jump started it was the project that I'm doing with Sue and Susan, and of the Three Witches. And so that inspired me enough to, and gave me something to work on that would give me, that would entertain me basically. And so I just said, okay, I'm just going to write on this, you know, 3 or 4 times a week, and I'm just ditching the whole word count. The only thing I need to do is make progress. So that's where I made the decision. It was not anywhere near a normal writing year for me. Normally
Mhm.
switching to a different project would work. But it didn't. So
Did your new goal go from words per day or words per week count to achieving a target? You know, I have to write this
yeah,
book by X date.
right. Well, the date is like out in May of 2021. So,
Hmm.
um, but I think we had decided we were going to be done by January or February writing, and I just basically said my goal is to write this novella. That's
Hmm.
it. And then that project ballooned for me into 5 novellas that were connected. And so now I'm on the second one, but I ditched the word count, and I belong to this Oregon Writers Network through workshops I've taken, and we did a virtual writing week in October, November, where basically every day is writing and you report in every day. And these are people who write 10,000 words a day. And I just kind of looked at it and went, okay, my goal is to just write words. And so I cleared my entire week and wouldn't allow myself to do anything but write. And no gardening, no errands, no meetings, nothing. And so that helped. I got a fair amount of words. I think I got 15,000 words for the week, which was enormous for what I've done this year. Um, and there were still people who got 10,000 words a day because they are who they are. Um, but I felt really good about it. And so I'm going to do another one this year, next year. I mean, um, but yeah, so it's been kind of off and on all year, and I'm still not up to the point where I at 5,200 words a week, because then the holidays hit and I just went, ah, life happened. So, um,
Okay. Well, Edward had a question. He wanted to know if you plan or do you write on the fly?
I write on the fly. I
Okay.
do what's called writing in the dark. I have a character in a situation with a problem. I might do like a couple hours of world building if I need to figure out where the setting is and some things about it. But I used to plan extensively, and then I read a book by Wesley Smith called Writing into the Dark, and I went, I have the same problem he does, is that I get bored easily. And if I plan something out, I go, okay, I don't need to write it. And it's no fun and I hate it. And Dean is always talking about having fun writing. And I thought that's what I want to do. That's why I started writing, was so because it was fun. And when it becomes a job, I might as well be, going and working it somewhere and getting paid lots of money, or at least some money. And so if I'm doing this for fun and it's not fun, well, what's the point? So to me, it's a lot more fun to just let my brain go, because my brain knows how to tell a story. I've been listening to stories since I was 2. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it. Are you still sharing your screen?
Yeah.
Don't know if,
Can you see it?
okay, I did. I don't know if it maybe has gone away. You might check it again.
Okay, well, let me check.
Otherwise, it might be my screen.
Okay, let me check and make sure. Um, Skype. Uh,
It looks like it's on my side. Other people are seeing it. So go ahead, continue.
okay. All right. I'll just come up here and play. Okay. So, anyway, you need to plan for success too, because I know that I have a tendency when I finish a novel to go, woohoo, okay, and then I don't get back to writing for like a month. And if you want to, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. For me, I would prefer to have a little bit more consistency and to have some, and to keep my productivity up. So have something in place that you're excited about or thrilled about, that's the next project to do. And I don't like to let myself get excited about it more than a couple days ahead of time, because otherwise then I don't want to finish the project I'm on, because bright new shiny things are so tempting. um, it's hot it's challenging to remain focused through the year. It is. So, here's some ways to do that. For me, it's always the next project. For some people, streaks work. A friend of mine, Susan Polwick, who's a traditional writer, writes 600 words every day, and she has for years. And during that time, I think she's in her 50s now. She's gotten 2 master's degrees, held a full-time job, first teaching at a university, and then working as a social worker, and now she's working as a hospital chaplain. Um, she weaves, plays with her 2 cats, is married, has friends, and does regular exercise. I mean, she's a real person. And her short fiction and novels sell. She's not incredibly prolific, but they sell every single one. And she has people who love her work. And she posts on Facebook more often than most people I know. And every day on her personal page, she writes down that she hit that 600 word goal. And I asked her about it, and she said it's because Gene Wolfe wrote 2 pages a day, every day. Fred Pohl wrote 4 pages every day. Another friend of mine told me about being in a workshop that Pohl was teaching with 3 other instructors, and it was time for them to meet one morning. The other instructors were all present, and the students were all present, and they sat and waited for Fred to finish his 4 pages and show up. And my friend was really impressed by Pohl's dedication. Um, and that's what professional writers do. They write. So think about that when, I've tried so hard to do streaks, but I can't do them on a daily basis. I can do streaks like for 4 years. I've published something on Amazon every month. And last year I blogged and sent out my newsletter twice every month. I can do streaks that are longer term, but daily doesn't work for me. They just make me want to rebel. Okay, so I think this is the most important thing, is keeping your writing a fun place to go. Because if it's not fun, then why are you doing it? And that's what I have got.
Linda, how do you balance writing, marketing, outreach with the dreaded editing? I had this problem 2 years ago where I wrote like 8 books in a year, and I was writing to avoid editing. And now I have all these books. Now I haven't written in a year, but I'm releasing books all the time because I have all this backlog of stuff that I just edit all the time. How do you balance the two things together?
Okay. Well, it took me years to figure this out. And for one thing, I write in the mornings because that's when I'm still kind of sleepy, but I've got more physical energy maybe than I do in the afternoon. And in the afternoons and sometimes the evenings, those are the times when I schedule my any of my um publishing stuff, any of my administrative stuff, any of my marketing stuff. Occasionally, I'll have something that I need to post on Facebook before I start writing, but I really try not to go on Facebook before I start writing because that way just is crazy. So as far as writing is concerned, I learned this process from Dean, basically, is that what I do, because I hated editing and it took me forever and I would dread it. And so what I did was, as I wrote, I would write like 1,000 words. I would go back to the beginning of the story, and I would go through and I would cycle through the whole thing, not in editing voice, but still in my creative voice, still in that space of creation, and just, make sure that things were clear. That was my goal. I wanted clarity, and I wanted to make this story more accurate to what I was seeing and hearing. And then I would get to where I ended, and then I would write 500 words more. And then I would go back 500 words to where I had ended, going over it the second time. And I would just do that thing where I would go and then when I got to the end, I would go 500 words more into the story, and then I would go back and cycle through that piece I just did, so that by the time I get to the end, every single piece of that story has been gone through twice. And then I do a quick pass that is basically just proofreading, nothing else. And you might, because I write a mixture of short fiction and novels are a little more challenging. Short fiction I might go through a third time because it doesn't really take that long, and
Mhm.
it's for some reason, short fiction. I'm not as good at short fiction because I don't like to read it. But I also, it seems like each word counts more than in a novel. In a novel, you have a little bit of a room to expand, but in a shorter piece, every word counts double. And so I would go through it again maybe, but pretty much then I would send it to one person because more than that gets damn confusing. And different people, I would send it to different people depending on who likes fantasy, who gets my mysteries. You know, you want to have somebody who reads what you're writing, and they would need to read it as a reader, not as a writer. And then you're not looking for criticism. You are looking for someone to say, this pulled me out of the story, or this stuck out, or, you know, and ask them questions like, you know, what worked for you? Because you can criticize anything to death. You can criticize Shakespeare to pieces. And you as a writer don't need that kind of feedback. You need feedback that basically tells you if the story's working or not. And you can get that best from somebody who's reading as a reader. So then I would address whatever, you know, issues they might have, and possibly. Um, I tend to I tend to know who my readers are, and some things I know that they say don't carry over to what other readers think. So, and many of my things I don't send to a reader. I just say, too bad. I might I if I used to send it out to a I used to have a friend who I traded copy edits with, and that was fabulous. But unfortunately, he's sick, so um, basically, I copy edit myself, which is horrible. It's a horrible experience, but you know it has to happen. And so I kind of basically edit as I go, is what I'm saying. And so I don't have to factor that time in. It's factored into my writing time, and that makes my writing time slower than if I just whizzed through the whole thing. But it also means that I don't have to factor in that those huge hours of dreaded editing time, and it makes the whole process much easier for me and more. I don't dread it anymore. So, you know, well, and it may not work for you all, but it took me a long time before I felt it would work for me. I I wouldn't I don't know if I'd suggest it for a beginning writer, but you might try it. I don't know.
One thing that I've done is claim editing time as words, because while
Hmm.
you're editing, you're wordsmithing. In essence, you're writing, and I would
Absolutely.
claim a certain chunk of time. Like if you edit for an hour, it's worth 500 words, and
Well, what
that
I
goes
do is
towards your yearly word, yeah, your yearly word goal or whatever.
I track my word count when I'm editing because I'm, you know, I have a before and after for every session, so that I can, because I'm going to claim those words because I always, because I tend to write thin. I When I edit, I add more words in to make things clearer. So I'm always adding words, and I'm counting every single word.
Cool.
So
So what is your plan going forward this year? How are you going to structure your goals? I know you said you haven't done all of your planning yet, but do you have a good idea what your year looks like? What would a year for Linda look like, and how would that, you know, maybe help other people plan
yeah,
their year?
okay. I'm thinking about using that structure that you used before. I To me, when I did look back at this year and think about what went right, what went wrong, what was just didn't work at all. Um, what I don't know is how this year is going to be and what the market's going to be like and what people are going to be like. I think things are still going to be dicey for several more months in terms of people's confidence in the economy, in everything that's going on. I don't think that until everyone has vaccines and things begin to open up again that we're going to see the economy beginning to thrive again. Um, a lot has to happen, and there's so many people who are out of work and afraid they're going to lose their houses that I'm not planning any big promotional pushes this year. It might happen towards the fall. I don't, but I'm not sure. I'm Because I didn't write much this year, I went over my publishing schedule for the year because I do plan out what I'm going to publish every single month. I had to do that in order to, I always have to do that. If you're going to publish every month, you got to have a clue what needs to be there. And since I didn't write much, I had a lot of holes in my publishing schedule. And so I decided to do a bunch of collections, a bunch of box sets that I've been waiting on. Um, and those are going to fill some of those publishing slots because they're new pieces. And so I still intend to publish every single month. I have to write 2 to 3 short stories fairly quickly. And so that means January and February. And the other thing I need to do is I've got what 3.5 novellas. Yeah, 3.5 novellas that I need to write for this novella series for the urban fantasies. And I know we're planning on publishing the first one in May. And I'm doing the website, so I got to get that spiffed up. And I still have my website to spiff up. So those are on the list of things to do. I intend to blog and do my newsletter twice a month like I did last year because that was really effective. I tripled or quadrupled the number of people who came to my website. Um, which was amazing to me because it's been hanging close to, 20 people a week for years, and I made it up into the hundreds. I think November was 120 people showed up at my website the first week of November when chaos was reigning everywhere. And my sales didn't go up, but my blog traffic did. And so I figure as long as I can keep people coming to my website, that's a fabulous thing. Because eventually they're going to go, wow, maybe I'll look at her books and buy some. At least that's the theory. Um, so as far as writing, I think right now, I basically took 200,000 words. I figured I can't do 250. I don't think I can this year, but I'm going to try 200,000. I've done that before. And I can't remember how many words a week that is, but I divided it by 40 because I said I'm going to give myself 12 weeks off throughout the whole year, spaced throughout the year, so that I have time for life to fall apart and to recover from that because I don't know what this year's going to bring. So that's kind of where I'm looking at with my goals, and I haven't got my life goals rounded out yet as to what I want to do in terms of anything that's cohesive. But and so I realized last year that I needed to include those in all my goals because if I don't, then they don't happen. My life goals just sit there, and so yeah, I have to figure out what I want to do exercise wise and what I want to do, you know, with the garden, with finances, all that stuff. So it gets complicated.
Susan has a quick couple questions. number one is maybe a low-hanging fruit. Do you include thinking time in your goals? Like, Susan, I'm guessing this is like planning or
Is she
thinking of
talking
the
about
story.
is she talking about writing or thinking about publishing, marketing stuff?
She's typing right now. I'll ask her other question, and when she's finished typing, we can go on there. She said she wanted to know what is a good publishing plan for blogging, short stories, and novels. She says yes, thinking about writing.
Okay.
So
I don't, because I don't spend a great deal of time thinking about it before. Because then it's it that falls into the category of planning, and it I don't want to write it then because I've already thought it all through. The thing for me that keeps me writing is I don't know what's going to happen, and I want to know what's going to happen. And I know that there are many people who produce a lot of words who say that if they plan a scene out before they sit down to write, it just goes so much more smoothly. And that's true. But then I go, well, I know what's going to happen. That's kind of anticlimactic. Why should I bother to write it? So, it's a little trick I have to play on myself, is to get me to sit down to write, is to basically say, oh, what's going to happen? Oh, okay. So I'm watching this character and she's walking through this doorway, and what's on the other side? I don't know. Oh, this happens. She gets hit over the head by something that falls off the top of the door. So if I am surprised by stuff like that, that keeps me wanting to writing. So it keeps me wanting to write. So I don't spend a great deal of time planning. Sometimes, I do pay attention to my dreams because sometimes things show up there. I pay attention to those times when I'm I don't know, in the shower, or getting dressed, and a thought flashes across my mind. I'll write that down. That might inform what I'm writing later that day, but I don't actually sit down and say, okay, I'm going to think about this next thing. So I hope that answers your question.
I think so. She also asked about, how do you manage, or maybe how do you put together your publishing plan for the year? You have a lot of things you're
Um,
doing with blogging, short stories, novels. How do you manage
yeah.
that through the year?
Okay. Well, I do have a spreadsheet that has by month what I'm going to publish that's new, and any old covers or things that need to be updated or reformatted, or different links added. So that's all in a spreadsheet. That's just kind of like that's where my production work goes. The I also have it's it's not a spreadsheet. It's just basically a list, a Word document, where basically I just have it written down by the month, and then bullet points afterwards of all the things I need to do that month. And so on every month is the blogging twice a month, and with one's the personal and one's the book review and newsletter. Same thing, just the link to the blog review and the personal one. And then I have things on there like take days off and write, however many words is, my goal that I need to write for that month. And I also put down things like, reformat this book to put up on Ingram Spark, or look for Kobo promos, or market this book, or so I basically just have a list. And then I go through my calendar, my digital calendar, and I put things on the list. And when I, put it on the list, I put a S after the task on my that's on my list of my Word doc, so that I know that it's scheduled. And then after that, things might get moved around, but they still are on the calendar. And if I get to the end of the month, and as I go through, I look at that Word document a lot, basically, just to make sure. And I cross things off because that's the fun part for me. I think it's it's a dopamine thing. It releases dopamine when you cross things off a list. I don't know. Um, but it's a very satisfying thing for me to cross things off lists. And so I just look at that a lot and cross stuff off, and then I look and go, oh yeah, I still have to do all that. Okay. And even though it's might be 2 weeks away on my calendar, I'm aware that it has to happen. And I think part of that helps me because I'm unconsciously figuring things out about, okay, what do I need for that cover? What, what genre is it? What am I thinking about for for the cover for that? So that by the time I get to the week that, or the afternoon or whatever that I need to do that cover, I have a clue what art I'm looking for. So there's, it's I'm using two or three different techniques, and it's kind of convoluted, but it seems to work for me. Does that make sense, Susan?
I think so. Yes. Does anybody have any other questions that they might have for Linda? Um, Anything else you'd like to ask? Feel free to send it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask her directly.
Linda,
Yeah.
I was thinking more about like when you were talking about your publishing plan and also the part where you said you don't like planning and you put everything on a spreadsheet, which I find hilarious because I would kill myself if I put everything on a spreadsheet because I don't do that kind of planning. But anyway,
Right.
it's like you have a whole mental schedule of doing this and doing that and doing the next thing, all because clearly you find that that's something that pulls in readers and that kind of thing. And I'm wondering, especially for newer writers, getting some kind of a strategic plan, whereas if I do this once a month or every 2 months, this will put my name forward to readers.
Okay.
If I do books, X number of books a year, where do I have to be? So that, because like doing a short story a month, for people who write slowly, a short story a month might be 3 weeks worth of their writing time. So I'm wondering how you came to the decision of what to do when.
Okay. Well, one thing I will tell you is that I don't like planning my writing, but my publishing and marketing, that is a different piece of my brain. And while there's still some creative stuff going on, that's like the organizational part of my brain. And I love organizing things. I just don't like doing it around my creativity. But as far as how I came to that piece, I came to publishing something every month, every 30 days, because that's what people have told me works with Amazon's algorithm. It's all about, and once you get to that point and publish something every 30 days, Amazon will help promote you. They're constantly sending Tony, I know, because she follows me, um, they're sending out an email to her about my new releases. So I just kind of went, okay, I want to take advantage of that. And the one thing about doing writing the way that I'm doing, and I haven't always written into the dark, like I said, but I thought I'm going to try this on and see if it works for me. And so I did that one year for like 3 months. Is because you are editing as you go along, even though it slows down your writing, to cycle back because I'm not a natural cycler. I have to remind myself to do it still. Because I used to be I'm going to write this thing straight through and then I'll go back and look at stuff. But cycling back in the end has saved me a lot of time. So I write faster than I used to because I always included the editing time in with the writing time because it's part of the writing. It's part of the book. It's part of getting to a finished piece of fiction. And so the thing is that it doesn't take me 3 weeks to write a story anymore, whereas it used to take a couple of weeks. And now I can write a story in a couple days. And, part of that is knowing, having a more clear idea about what a story is as opposed to a novel. But, and that's something that you learn from just writing the story. But the way that I figure out as far as the whole yearly schedule is that I sit and look at what inventory I might have. What did I write last year? And I think about where, what might be a good month to publish that. If I have a Christmas story, I need to get that out in like November at least. If I have a Halloween story, that has to go out by September. If I have something gardeny, May just seems like the perfect time because that's real gardeners start in like February, but most of the world is not real gardeners. Most of, around here, most people sit there around April or May and start thinking about, well, maybe I should plant some flowers or a vegetable garden this year. So, May just seemed like the perfect time when it was up in everybody's mind. So, there are seasonal things to think about in terms of scheduling, but there's also just, I have an empty slot. What do I have available? What can I combine? I always want to take a short story and combine it with other short stories in the same subgenre and make a collection because then I can use it twice. If I have a series that's finished, well, it's going to need a box set a few months or a year later because you always want to make as much use of your inventory as you possibly can. Um, and I know there was another thing that came up to me, but it's gone now because my brain is only holds so much these days. But it's been basically, I've learned a lot of this stuff just by listening to Matt and Susan and Tony and everybody else who's given presentations here. I just keep my ears to the ground and say, well, let's experiment with this. My sales are kind of down. I think maybe it's time to do a paid newsletter promotion. And so a lot of it has been winging it in the past. And then last year I kind of started, or maybe it was the year before, I kind of started saying, well, I'm going to just plan some things out and see what that happens instead of, sitting down in the middle of the month and going, I think I should do something because my sales suck. So that's kind of the planning that goes behind what I do is I just put it into my calendar and say, do something. So does that make sense, Susan?
That makes a lot of sense, and it's a good way for me at least to think about it. So that works. We'll keep picking your brain, Linda.
Well, I hope it's still here in the new year. I'm working on finding it.
I gave mine away for Christmas. It's gone in small pieces to many people, so I don't think they're aware they even have it.
Ah, mine just kind of had a meltdown. And I just said, okay, you go sit in the corner under the tree and recover. So,
Does anybody have any additional questions for Linda? I think somebody might be typing something. Edward, maybe. We've talked a little bit in the chat here. Maybe what we can ask people to. Yeah, go ahead.
I can speak it rather than write it. I've been listening to all of this. There's been a lot of extra indoor time that we've been forced to endure because of the long, dark winter that's going to last for another 4 years. What
Yeah.
have people been doing with all of this extra time? My most recent manuscript has 6 chapters. The first 6 chapters are basically the introduction to the story. Have other people been extending their writing in that way?
I know a lot of people who have. I know tons of people who have had the best writing year of their life. I had the best gardening year of my life, but because my goal was to get more, one of my goals last year was to get more exercise in. And so I just kind of shifted from being obsessed with writing to obsessed with gardening. Um, but I'm sure some of the people here have been spending a lot more energy writing, and that, not being so, not having so many social demands on them has been a benefit. So pipe up, you guys.
Yeah, I can start off by saying that I've had an opportunity to recreate my website with with Matt's help. Uh, the only negative for that is that somehow uh, uh, some kind of a spam detector has been included in my website, so now I'm not getting any comments. But the good news is that people who have seen the website have now contacted me by email and told me of some of their adventures. I'm also studying a new language, and I'm getting ready to publish my finished manuscript. I was about to say masterpiece. My finished manuscript this year. So
Ooh, fabulous.
yeah.
Anybody else? You can come off mute.
Okay. I've had a surprise. When I released my last book in September, I sent a release to the local newspaper and they published it today. So,
Woohoo!
but I have not seen any results in my sales. But luckily, someone was reading the paper and caught it and told me because I kind of quit watching.
Which paper, Tony?
The Herald.
Cool.
But
Very,
all this time off has been hard on me
yeah,
because I'm social
yeah.
and I'm an extrovert. And I've been making friends of homeless people and ghosts in the cemetery.
Don't get them mixed up.
No, well, some you could.
I've kind of been enjoying the silence. I don't know if I've been more productive, but I've liked it. And I'm a little concerned when everything opens up again. I'm going to have to talk to people when I don't want to. So there, where will I be?
So, Linda, what does the last item on your sheets mean? Write what scares you.
That came from Stephen King, because that's what he does, is write what scares him. And
Oh,
he
you mean
does,
the topic should
yeah,
scare you? I see.
yeah,
I thought maybe the writing style should scare you.
yeah, well, maybe not. But yeah, the topic, write about what scares you. Well, I'm not hearing a lot of questions. Is that
Hi. Yeah, I think we've maybe wrapped it up. There's an idea that we wanted to do is ask people to maybe spend the next 2 weeks writing down some goals for themselves, and maybe at our next meeting we'll ask people to we'll go around the table and see if people can give maybe 1 or 2 or 3 goals that they came up with over the next
Yeah.
2 weeks.
And also something else I'd like them to consider, because one of the things we're going to talk about in the next meeting is what people want from the co-op next year. I want you to consider, oh, that was one of my other goals, was learning something all the time. Watching a lot of webinars or videos or taking classes about something in publishing or marketing or writing that helps you. And so one of the things at the co-op I want to know is, what do you want to learn next year from us? Um, what what type of programming should I be thinking about? That, it really helped last year when we went around the table and people threw their ideas out about what they wanted to know, because that helped me figure out for the whole year, which was good. That meant less meetings for the steering committee to help me figure out where we should go as things were closing up, and we had to move online. So we may or may not be doing things in person for a while, because who knows what the libraries are going to do and the world, and how long it's going to be before it's all safe to meet again. But let me know, at the next meeting, what you're interested in doing, what you want to learn, and I'll see if I can figure out somebody who can teach it, because we all have holes. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if it's helpful, we can send out a chart again. We did that last year, where people filled out on a chart the areas that they needed to increase their knowledge. And so that was one of the things we started to use for developing meetings, but then of course everything went south. But that might be something, if people have it in hand to sort of guide their thinking, that might be helpful.
Yeah. But I just want people, it's true. And I really think that we should do that again. I think people should also be thinking about their own lives right now, and what they think they might help them next year in terms of moving forward. I think that there's going to be tremendous growth next year. I just don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen in February or June, or it might even happen in December. But I think things are going to move forward pretty quickly once they start going, but I don't know when that's going to be, because I don't have a crystal ball. So anyway, I don't think I have anything else to say.
We have a couple new people. So what I'll do is I'll stop the recording,